Well, the suspected school shooter in Georgia will face a judge for the first time today, charged with killing 2 students and 2 teachers.
He's just 14 years old, but will be tried as an adult. He was questioned by the FBI last year after they received a tip about an online threat. Let's bring in former FBI agent and founder of Sierra One Consulting, Rob D'Amico. Welcome to Houston's Morning Show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Well, Rob, obviously those warning signs and red flags were there. Can you explain to us what happens when the FBI gets a tip like this? Because we understand it just wasn't enough information at the time to do anything about it, even though we understand he was threatening to shoot up a school over a year ago.
Well, it's actually not up to the FBI at this point to make that determinant. The FBI gets thousands of these a day, literally thousands a day. If they're specific and they name a school and a time, they'll call the school directly. They'll call local law enforcement directly if there's enough information and it's time sensitive. And then it's up to local law enforcement on that. The threat last year was he was going to, the person said they're going to shoot an elementary school in 2 to 3 years. They determined through some cyber things who they thought this person was, and then they called the county, and the county went out and interviewed the father and the son, like we talked about, or what's been heard. The locals determined there was not enough to make a probable cause arrest because these are state crimes. I mean, there's no federal crime involved in that. So it's up to the locals, depending on what they see. They saw school shooting stuff in the son's bedroom, but it still wasn't enough to come up with an arrest warrant. So they talked to him. They talked to the school, and that's where I think one of the problems came up with this is he went in 8th grade, he was going to Jackson County School. And then when he went up to high school in 9th grade, he switched down to Barrow County, and it wasn't the same school. So I don't know if that information got passed from his 8th grade school up to his high school to warn him about what happened in the past. And I think that's one thing that we have to look at. If a student makes a school threat, that threat information has to follow him from school to school and maybe make it so that the principal actually has to acknowledge that he's seeing that threat from the student.
Well, and you just mentioned having it follow him. What does happen after someone is cleared and maybe they say, okay, this person's not a threat? Do they still stay on the radar, or does life just move on?
It depends on the school. So I don't think there's enough documentation processing to say, hey, this has to stay with them. I think it's up to the school officials and how they do things in local law enforcement that, in fact, does things like that. So I think maybe that's where we need to start requiring certain information to have to be passed from school administrators and for them to actively acknowledge that they got the information, because like I said, it happens thousands of times and it doesn't normally turn into an actual school shooting. Sometimes the interview scares them off. But in this case, it's even worse that the father bought him a Christmas present of an AR-15 8 months after he gets interviewed about a school shooting, and it's known he has school shooting material in his room. So I think that's why you saw the quick arrest on the father.
I think it's so important when tragedies happen like this that we all learn, school districts learn, law officers learn. Anything that stands out here that you think could help prevent a problem like this in the future?
Well, I think some of this, like they talked about the new alarm system and what they had, but I also think possibly looking at how the kids are bringing stuff into the school. How did he get a weapon that's fairly large in size? It wasn't a pistol. Now, AR-15s can get small enough that you can put them in a backpack, but I think we have to start looking at how they get into the school. I remember when I went to high school, I mean, it was way back when, but there was a big drug problem in the city next to us, and you all had to go through one entrance and they searched your bags. You're going onto the property, especially if the person has some type of history, violence, making threats type of thing. They probably should have to go and check in with the school resource officer before they go into the school or something along those lines. And there are things out there that are starting to come on the market. I've seen one that can easily quickly block a door. Now, with my children, I told them not to like cower in a corner and hide, because then you're just hoping someone doesn't come in with a gun. If they were on the first floor, I told them to take a chair, break a window, and get out of that area. Maybe not into the hallway because you don't know what's out there, but I think there's some there's definitely going to be some things on the market that are going to come into play to start making things safer for the students and the staff.
Yeah. Rob D'Amico, former FBI agent, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.